Let's start now. The surface breach. Scene 1. The cold open. The birth of a monster. The night was supposed to be silent, but tonight, the silence itself felt like a predator. Deep within the hidden Ubuyashiki estate, the very air had turned stagnant, smelling of ancient copper and rotting iron. This wasn't the smell of a normal death. It was the scent of 1,000 years of malice finally breaking free. As the dust from the massive explosion at the master's mansion began to settle, a figure emerged from the swirling gray ash. This was Muzan Kibutsuji, but he was no longer the man in the black suit. He had shed his human disguise like a snake shedding its skin. His body was now a map of pulsating, purple veins that throbbed with a rhythmic, wet sound. The most horrifying detail: 12 giant, jagged mouths had ripped open across his chest, his muscular thighs, and his reaching arms. Each mouth was lined with razor-sharp teeth, and they were all inhaling in unison, sucking in the oxygen from the surrounding air like a high-pressure vacuum. His hair, once as dark as a moonless night, had turned a ghostly, bone white, whipping around his face like a nest of albino cobras. Scene 2. Tamayo's final defiance. In the middle of this nightmare, one woman stood her ground. Lady Tamayo, the demon doctor who had spent 4 centuries seeking revenge, had her hand buried deep within Muzan's chest. Her fingers were clutched around his primary heart, and her blood, saturated with a lethal medicine, was flowing directly into his system. Muzan's claws were dug deep into Tamayo's skull. Blood poured down her face, staining her beautiful kimono, but her eyes were filled with a cold, piercing triumph. "Why do you persist, you wretched traitor?" Muzan's voice was a distorted, multi-tonal roar that sounded like several people screaming at once. "I gave you eternity. I gave you life." Tamayo didn't flinch. She leaned in, her voice a calm whisper that cut through his rage. "Muzan, do you feel the fire in your veins? That isn't just poison. It is my hatred. I have combined 4 different drugs into your body. Right now, you are aging at a rate of 9,000 years per minute. Your cells are turning to ash. Your immortality is a lie. And today, for the first time in 1,000 years, you are finally going to die." With a sickening crunch, Muzan's grip tightened, and he crushed her skull like a dried leaf. Tamayo's body began to dissolve into embers, but her laughter echoed in the wind. She had done the impossible. She had made the god of demons feel the weight of time. Scene 3. Yushiro and the Architecture of Madness. High above the battlefield, floating on a platform of rotating mahogany, the Baiwa woman, Nakime, was in a state of absolute agony. Her single, giant eye was wide, with blood vessels popping like tiny firecrackers. Standing behind her was Yushiro. His hands were pressed hard against her temples, and his own eyes were glowing with a frenzied, demonic blue light. Yushiro was a virus. He was hacking into Nakaimi's brain, fighting against Muzan's supreme mental commands. His nose began to bleed, and his skin started to tear under the immense pressure of controlling the entire Infinity Castle, but he wouldn't let go. "You killed her," Yushiro screamed in his mind, his thoughts a jagged blade of grief. "You took the only light I ever had. Now, I will tear your kingdom out of the earth and drag you into the sun." With a final, soul-shattering effort, Yushiro struck the biwa strings himself. The sound wasn't a musical note. It was the sound of reality breaking. The entire castle, miles of twisting corridors and endless rooms, tilted at a 90-degree angle. Scene 4. The surface breach. In the quiet town above, the people were sleeping, unaware of the hell beneath their feet. Suddenly, the ground began to heave. Streets were ripped apart. Buildings were swallowed as if the earth itself had grown teeth. With a roar that shook the mountains, the Infinity Castle erupted through the surface. Massive wooden beams and ancient stone pillars shattered through the asphalt. The demon slayers who had been trapped in the dark labyrinth were thrown out onto the debris-strewn streets. The battle was no longer in a closed fortress. It was under the open, moonlit sky, but the moon was high and the sun was still hours away. Muzan stood in the center of the town square, surrounded by the ruins of a town he had just destroyed. He looked around, his white hair flowing in the cold wind, his 12 mouths chanting a guttural language that chilled the blood of every survivor. Scene 5. The Wall of Hashira. Everyone! To me, Gyomei Haimajima's voice was like rolling thunder. The 5 remaining Hashira, the pillars of humanity, landed in the town square. They were battered, bleeding, and exhausted, but their spirits were unbreakable. Muzan didn't wait. He unleashed his primary weapons, 8 massive, blade-tipped whips that erupted from his back. They moved so fast, they created sonic booms, turning the nearby stone walls into dust in a split second. The Hashira moved in a formation that had been perfected through centuries of tradition. Gyu Tomioka used his water-breathing 11th form, dead calm, his blade creating a silent vortex that parried the lethal whips. Obanai Iguro, the serpent Hashira, slithered through the chaos, his jagged blade moving like a flickering tongue, cutting through the gaps in Muzan's defense. Michuri Kenroji's whip sword created a perimeter of pink light, parrying 5 tentacles at once. Tsunemi Shinazugawa was a cyclone of green rage, his wind breathing leaving trails of ozone in the air. And at the center was Gyomei, the stone Hashira. He swung his massive spiked flail, the iron ball smashing through Muzan's defensive tentacles with the force of a falling mountain. The square was lit up by the sparks of steel clashing against demon flesh. It was a beautiful, terrifying dance of death. Muzan was being pushed back, but he was only getting started. Scene 6. The Transparent World. At the edge of the crater, Tanjiro Kamado struggled to stand. His lungs were bleeding and his ribs were shattered, but his mind was entering a state of absolute crystalline calm. The colors of the world began to fade, turning into a gray, translucent map. Tanjiro had entered the transparent world. For the first time, he saw the internal mechanics of the King of Demons. Muzan didn't have 1 heart, he had 7. And they weren't stationary. They were constantly shifting positions inside his torso to avoid being hit. He also had 5 brains distributed throughout his head and body, processing the battle at a speed no human could ever match. Tanjiro realized the horror of their task. Cutting off Muzan's head was useless. To kill him, they had to destroy all 12 vital organs at the exact same microsecond. He saw the way the blood flowed through Muzan's veins, the way the muscles twitched before a whip strike. He saw the opening thread, but it was a tangled mess of red death. "I see you, Muzan," Tanjiro whispered, his hand tightening on his charcoal black blade. I see every heart you've stolen. I see every life you've eaten, and tonight I am going to stop them all. Scene 7, the sonic scream. Just as the Hashira were about to land a combined strike, Muzan's 12 mouths stopped inhaling. They opened wide, his jaw unhinging like a serpent's. A high-frequency sonic scream erupted from his body. It wasn't just a sound. It was a physical wave of vibration. The remaining glass in the town shattered. The Hashira were hit by a wave of intense nausea. Their eardrums ruptured and blood began to trickle down their necks. Worse than the pain was the effect on their nervous systems. The frequency targeted their brains, making their muscles spasm uncontrollably. Their breathing rhythms, the foundation of their strength, were broken. Gyu fell to one knee, his sword handshaking. Sanemi vomited blood, his balance completely gone. Muzan stood in the center of the square, a dark god of silence, watching as the mightiest warriors of humanity were reduced to twitching, helpless bodies. He raised his blade arms, ready to deliver the final execution. Scene 8, the endless loop and the heroic hope. Muzan! A trail of fire cut through the sonic wave. Tanjiro Kamado lunged, his blade glowing with a pure, white-hot heat. He performed the first form of the Hinokami Kagura, then immediately transitioned into the second, then the third. He wasn't stopping. He was starting the endless loop, the 13th form. The heat radiating from Tanjiro's body was so intense that the blood on his face evaporated into red steam. With every step he took, the asphalt beneath his feet didn't just crack. It liquefied into black glass. Muzan's eyes widened. For the first time in 400 years, he saw the shadow of Yoriki Sugikuni in the boy's movements. The scars on Muzan's body began to glow with a dull, orange light, as if they were burning from the inside out. "This is for my family," Tanjiro roared, his voice cutting through the sounds of the dying town. "This is for every person you turned into a monster. The sun is coming, Muzan, and I am the one who will hold you here until it burns you to ash." Scene 9, the cliffhanger. The shadow of defeat. Tanjiro's fire was blinding, but Muzan was a king for a reason. As Tanjiro completed the 10th form, his heart gave a terrifying skip. His eyes, though seeing the transparent world, began to bleed. His muscles were tearing under the pressure of the 13th form. Muzan saw the opening. A cruel smile spread across his monstrous face. One of his tentacles, faster than any before, shot out. Not toward Tanjiro's neck, but toward his wounded chest. "You are strong, boy," Muzan's voice whispered in Tanjiro's mind. "But you are still just a human." The screen fades to black as we hear the sound of a blade breaking. Is it Tanjiro's sword or the spirit of the Hashira? Scene 10. Happy ending and engagement. Anime audio tales. But wait. Through the darkness, a single, hopeful melody begins to play. A vision of Nezuko running through the forest, her eyes finally turning human. A vision of a world without demons, where Tanjiro and his friends can finally sit under the wisteria trees and laugh without fear. That world is so close, yet so far. The night is at its darkest, but the dawn is coming. Tanjiro has lit the fire of hope, and as long as that flame burns, humanity still has a chance. Thank you for joining us on this epic journey today on Anime Audio Tales. If you want to see if Tanjiro can finish the 13th form, or if Muzan's darkness will swallow the world, you cannot miss what's coming next. Subscribe to our channel right now and hit that bell icon so you are the first to witness part 2, The Broken Pillars. We are bringing you the absolute conclusion of this masterpiece, and you are part of this legendary story. Leave a like if you are rooting for Tanjiro, and tell me in the comments, which Hashira's survival are you praying for the most? Your support keeps this story alive. This has been Anime Audio Tales. Sleep with one eye open, Slayers, because tomorrow the pillars will break. See you in the next one. End of episode 1.